What's up, brother?
What's going on?
All right, cool. So for anyone who's going to watch this later on, you're kind of tuning in for have me watch us talk about Psy's newest product, which is a complete vocal production master course. I'm going to go into a little depth about why I feel it's so important for people to understand how much power you get when you can do your vocals from home. Okay, so let's just break down before we even get into why he created it, what's going on. More importantly, why is it important for people to understand the power? Okay. As an artist myself and as someone who's now an executive, a lot of times when I work with artists, if they can't deliver vocals in a fast time period, so let's say if I produce a track, I send it to them, and they send me back vocals that are not well received, meaning they're off tune, they're not comped well. That basically means that I have to now work double. I have to now spend more hours to go through all of their vocal takes, go through all of their playlists, put the effects on, tune their vocal, melodyne, do all of these things. It means my time is actually worth way more value. But then when we go to split the track, everyone wants even splits. So here's where I talk about power. When you can negotiate things with leverage in your career, if in your business, and they're based off actual value, there seems to be a much easier road to people wanting to collaborate. Okay. It's because it's less time and because the singer is in control of this portion, which is their voice. They should be. So as a singer, you should know how your voice sounds the best, what frequencies don't sound good, how to put the right amount of reverb or delay, or how your vocals sound in stacks. You should know your voice better than producers know your voice. But usually it's not like that. Usually a producer spends many years understanding how to make someone sound good, which is, I understand that. But then a singer walks in and just wants the producer to do all the work. It's like, make me sound like a star. Instead of the artist walking in with the power and going, I already know how I sound the best. Let's collaborate. That's a different way of looking, a different shift. So first couple of things, there is a payment that you get in the vocal recording, which is called a vocal master. If you're not recording high quality music from home and you have to go to the producer's house, they own the vocal master. If you can quickly turn around your vocals to people, that means you can work with producers and DJs all around the world. You never have to leave your house. It's extremely important. And third, for you to be able to come up with an idea, record it, and then say to someone, hey, do you mind doing a remix? Do you mind doing an acoustic version? Do you mind doing, you have all these options and opportunities that open up because you're able to do it directly from your house. For the last 6 years, I don't care what producer, if it was a Grammy Award winner, #1 songwriter, if I worked with them, a lot of times they're cutting vocals from home. So we're going into this new world now where you have the power in your laptop, but you might not have the education or the knowledge in your mind. And that's the reason why we're bringing in Psy today, because he's someone who, in our group, we have a private group of musicians called the Billboard 500 Club. In our group, whenever Psy delivers a track that people are listening to at a demo critique, they're always going, wow, your vocals sound amazing. So after you hear this over and over again, you keep kind of seeing the same thing, you realize he has a special sauce, a special insight, a different way of looking at maybe what he's doing that people aren't seeing because they're not in the room with him. So we were lucky enough that he took the time to create a full master course showing a lot of his tricks, his secrets, his tips, not saying some, like he shows you from start to finish how to make your voice sound professional, how to make it sound radio ready. So that way, when you deliver your song to an executive, to another collaborator, the only response they're going to have is, wow, this sounds great. And that's what we were trying to go for in this course. And I'm really excited to bring Psy in today and kind of talk about, first of all, like I said, why he did it, what he's doing in it, and how important it is for him as an artist to now open this new side of production, because he is an artist. So it's not just like he's just a producer or songwriter. He also is an artist. And that's very important because I think the artists of the new generation have to have knowledge on a few things. You can't just be on stage and then say, okay, I'm done. It might be you're on stage one day, but the next day you might be producing your own music from home, or you might be producing another artist. So Psy, thanks a lot for coming in today, man. How you doing, brother?
Yeah, that's it's very loaded.
Of course.
You know why I did it. You know, I think what you're creating and the way that you're inspiring people to be as self-sufficient as they possibly can is great, and I just wanted to contribute to that however I could. And it's interesting, you know, when because I produce other artists, and a lot of the times they're in this development stage, and their mind says like they don't want to learn how to do it. And it's like, and I even tell them openly before they even pay me, it's like, well, you should probably invest time into getting to know how to do this stuff yourself, because then you don't have to pay people like me ever again. And like, it's amazing to me how much pushback you get. Like they're like, well, it's just, it's like nerd complicated stuff. And it's just like, okay, whatever. But the level that you can develop faster if you figure out this stuff and get to really know who you are, and like as a vocalist, and get to know this technology, because like the industry is shifting more and more independent to the individual. And like the more hats that you can wear, the more valuable you are going to be. Because now, after this past year of working strictly remotely, like if I get a client that cannot send me vocal stems, and now I have to add this, now I have to go to the studio and I have to figure all of this stuff out. And it's like, man, what was I doing wasting all this time driving back and forth to the studio? And like, it's like a blessing when people can just send you really high quality, or just the recordings, even just
yeah.
being able to get a recording done. But some people don't even want to learn that. And it's like, but now my expectation, even as a producer, is like, well, anyone that I really want to seriously work with has to be able to do this. It's like, and maybe not mix it fully, but at least be able to send me something that I can throw into my project instead of having to travel around. And so as many artists that we can help get to that point, like it's a necessity to be able to do that.
I totally agree. And I think it's so cool the way you said you're being upfront with them, saying, listen, if you learn this, you don't have to pay me to do it. So let's talk about that real quick. On average, if you were doing a vocal production session, how much would you charge per hour?
Well, a lot of the times I lump it in with a track that we're already doing.
Okay. So let's say, what would you price it at?
Okay, so you get engineering fees, and engineering fees are between like 15 and 50 an hour, just for the engineering fee, depending on who you're hiring to engineer. For me,
and no vocal production. That's just
to record it, just to sit there and hit 3 on Pro Tools and like just get recordings. And then, but then you have to rent the studio out hourly. I'm not paying for that. It's like, and that in LA, it ranges between, you can get it for $20 an hour, but you're going to get a $20 an hour setup, or you can pay $100 an hour, and it ranges in between that. So now you're hourly on studio time. So what you're looking at least like between $50 and $100 an hour just to get the records. And now you have to be a solid enough vocalist and confident enough in yourself to get the takes done in a timely manner, because now you're on the clock. And a lot of the times these people that didn't take the time to digest this knowledge are taking 4 or 8 hours to get all of the vocals done. Done extremely fast. But it's like, it's cool with me because I'm just sitting there hitting record for hours and collecting more money. But it's like,
yeah. Okay, so let's look at some. I like breaking things down into numbers, so that way people can hopefully remove like feelings, because you can just see it in black and white. So let's say you said on average, if you have an engineer, studio time, and a solid vocal producer, let's say you might be spending on average $100 an hour. Yeah. I'm gonna lump it together like that, right?
Just do that. Why not?
Cool. And let's say an average song might take 4 hours for someone to record. I think it sometimes takes more for people who are beginning, but let's just say 4 hours. So let's say $400 you'll be spending on just these. It has nothing to do with production yet, nothing to do with mixing, has nothing to do with anything yet. We're just $400 in on the vocals. So let's say you want to compete in the music industry, and every person who's actually competing in the music industry is doing roughly, and this is a low number I'm throwing out, low number, let's say 20 songs a year. That's just the low number. So if you do 20 songs a year and it's at $400 per song you're doing, that's $8,000 that you're spending a year in just your vocals. If you multiply that by 5 years' time, that's $40,000. That's $40,000 that people are waiting. And that's the low number that I'm talking about. On average, I'm writing 50 to 70 songs a year. So on the low at 20 for 5 years, if you're trying to be in this business. And I think this is the reason why a course like yours is so important, because I've seen other courses out there. I've watched things on YouTube, and I want to be very clear. People, when you're watching stuff on YouTube, you're not always getting all of the secrets. You're only getting stuff that people want to show. And I'm letting you know this. There's a lot of information I give out that you're never going to find on YouTube. You're just never going to find it because people either don't know it or they're not out there showing it. There are times when I'm in the studio with very big producers and someone has said, oh, you should share that on YouTube. And the producer goes, why would I show everyone the secret that I know? So when people say that, and I've been in studios and I'm like, fair enough. He's like, why would I show everyone this? It's a competitive world. So Sai has taken the time to create a course that is extremely reasonably priced. So that way you can learn the information and not spend $40,000 over the next 5 years. Instead, you can get something that you actually can afford, and you'll have knowledge from the eyes of someone who's doing it at a very extremely high level. So I just want to show the numbers real quick. Now, Sai, talk to me a little bit about how the flow of the course works so people can understand what they're getting into. It could be their first time. Some people might be experienced. Some people might be beginners. But how does it kind of flow?
The way I did it, I took a song that I already had done and I basically redid the lead on it. So that way I kind of have a step-by-step sort of what process I go through. Like the things that I think about from the moment I sit down in front of the mic and to the moment that I start like manipulating and doing post-production stuff. And I tried to organize it in a linear possible way, because I think the most knowledge that I was able to get was when I was interning at a studio, sitting there fly on the wall and just watching and absorbing, not asking questions or anything, just watching it happen and being like, oh, that's it, or like, oh, I didn't see that, and then go home and investigate what that thing was on my own and then implement it to what I was already doing. So I mean, I think I have a little disclaimer in the beginning. There are some like rudimentary, like fundamental, nothing you can't find on YouTube, sort of basic getting set up. This kind of implies that you already understand. You've already picked what DAW you're using. You've already understood like how to get your recording in there. And like, there's countless amounts of information from the manufacturer websites and things like that on how to get basic things like that. But
you're saying like by this point, hopefully someone have already picked Pro Tools or Logic or Studio One, and they kind of know, okay, I have this DAW, but now I just want to make my vocals sound super professional.
Yeah, it's like what's the process now? Because it's just like without like a really step A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever. It gets very confusing, and then you're jumping and you waste a lot of time kind of jumping and getting disorganized. So I tried to keep it as linear as I possibly could, just the step-by-step, what I usually do each step of the way as like a foundation. There are always ways to bend rules, but as kind of like a blanket of how I usually tend to go about things is kind of how I laid it out.
Okay. Once again, I'm just going to stop in this moment because we're talking about time. It's very important that people are valuing their time. And so I kind of look at it like that. When you're saying, when you're beginning, and I can speak in total agreement with you, it's not organized. Because I think organization of a DAW that's not an intuitive thought. You're not like, okay, I'm going to make sure my vocals are very organized, and then this is going to go to that bus route because you don't know it. And this plugin goes on that one because it's affected by the one before it. There are certain things that you wouldn't know until you really start diving in. And sometimes that can take people years until they even figure out, use a template first. Sometimes it takes people years before they go, oh, I actually know how to bus and route things professionally. I've met people who I'm saying, where's your vocal template? And they're like, what do you mean, Adam, a vocal template? I'm like, dude, you telling me that every time you open up a DAW, you actually put new track and then new track and then new track? That's time. So let's say person spends an hour a session just organizing things because they have no template. And they spend another 30 minutes just doing, every time you pull a plug in and you load it up, it has to load. So sometimes that happens. Let's say an hour and a half every song. And once again, you do 20 songs a year. If you're spending over 30 plus hours on just loading something up and your time is worth $100 an hour for your life, you just spend 3,000 hours that year. Multiply it by 5, that's $15,000 you just wasted in loading things up. That's a lot of wasted time.
Yeah.
When you look at it like that, you're like, because I remember the years of just like new track,
Yeah,
you
you
know.
do everything from scratch because you don't, and you're still figuring it out, and you don't know what exactly. Like you try new things every single time, which I guess is a really important part of the process too, in like figuring out really deeply how everything works. But yes, after certain points, like, I like how this sounds. Let me fucking save this, so like I don't have to do this ever again because I already know it worked, and now I can just work on improving that and keep saving and adding like stacks to the templates and stacks to things that are unique to like your sound and individuality, and
Yes.
that becomes extremely important.
Yes. So I think what's really cool is not only did you do a course that walks people through the thought process of why are you doing these things? Why are you putting these plugins in a certain order? Why are you putting things in auxiliary tracks? Why does your template look like, dude? Not only are you walking people through the start to finish on a song and get to see you kind of working through it all, but you also created a template for Studio One for the people who might also have Studio One to say, hey, listen, you don't have to even start from scratch. You can just click on my template and all the things will pop up. And I think that time, once people start realizing, I don't want to be wasting this much time. When that clicks in, that's a moment. Because I remember when it happened for me. I got the first template. I had a business partner who is one of the biggest mixers in the world. I mean, he mixed Michael Jackson's Bad album. He also mixed Katy Perry's Wake Up in Vegas. He did OAR Shatter. He sent me his mixing template. We sent it to me. I looked at this thing and I was like, hallelujah. It was like, oh my God, everything's so much easier. Why was I wasting the last 6 years not doing this every time? And so, but here's the thing, there was no video to walk me through why he did these things. So I still spent another 4 months just tinkering around and like, okay, you do this, but you took the time to show people why, and knowing the why is so important to what will happen with someone's voice. Cool, man.
Yeah, because I mean, I think one of the biggest unique things about this is like my philosophy on it, and like not necessarily like the technical aspects of it, but you know, my philosophy about delivering a vocal and my philosophy about making decisions and
Mm.
knowing what questions to ask yourself, because a lot of the music production and mixing and post-production process is about like what's wrong and how do I fix it, and understanding how to get from point A to B, and recognizing when those problems exist, and then having your formulas to be able to kind of reverse engineer to get to the sound
Ah.
that you want. And I think that I keep finding myself with everyone that asks me questions about it, like, okay, well, we're asking ourselves questions, and like, how do we answer these questions to ourselves? Because that's, and then a lot of it has to be intuition after a certain point. But I mean, it's because I don't know, creativity is an interesting animal. So
No, I completely understand what you're saying. And in my mind, it goes like this. For instance, if I'm producing something and let's say there's a vocal that is a cool part, but I go, you know what? I think this vocal will sound even more interesting if I put Alter Boy on it and I dropped it an octave, because I know that this moment would create more shock value or more interesting, unique part here. And so I'm already thinking kind of 3 steps ahead. And then when I try it and it does work the way I thought it is, I go, okay, cool. And I do that with everything. So you're always kind of deciphering your thoughts in your mind. And then once you get to a point that goes, oh, that's probably a good thought, then you try it. And then you get the verification of like, that does sound good. But unless you actually are able to think those thoughts or know why to, they don't even come in your brain. You're just like, oh, I don't know what to do here.
well, it's just like and it starts at that weird intuition in your stomach where you're like, I don't know what's wrong with this, but
Yes.
I need to fix it. And like, and that's the thing that we're always chasing. And I think why I'm obsessed with it is it's like that uneasy feeling. And until you get rid of it, like it's not done. And like, I don't know, that could just be me, or just producers in general, just like chasing after that sound and that feeling of like, oh, when everything sits right and you like breathe and you're like, oh, that's good now, like I and now
That
do.
satiation feeling.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Ah, yeah. Were you always a good singer?
I didn't start singing until after high school.
Okay.
I was a guitar player I started taking voice lessons though in college and kind of built it from there. After I started writing songs at the end of high school, and I mean, it was terrible. Like my influence was John Mayer, which was like like old whispery John Mayer, like
Yeah, yeah,
which is
yeah.
not like a good, because I was a guitar player, so I fell in love with a lot of that stuff, and then the singing came next. But then it wasn't until I took vocal lessons and understood that, because the other half of it is like sometimes it's not about vocal production. Sometimes it's just like a shitty recording on an iPhone with a great vocalist is still emotionally like
Mm.
satiating. You know, it's still like, oh, that's a great vocal. Like, and because you want to be great going in, and then everything you do afterwards is just production value and like and shock value and add, you know, to package it, you know.
I think it's really cool because I watched your course, so it was really cool for me to see, as someone who myself who is a vocal producer, and to see the way you think and go, okay, yeah, these are thoughts that we think, but not everyone always explains them to the degree, because usually in a session you're not talking it through with someone else, you're just doing it. So someone else could be in the room and they see me edit and they see me comp and they're seeing why they see me choosing the takes, but they don't know why I'm choosing that take.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have 5 takes in front of me. They don't know why I chose that one unless they have a hypersensitive ear and they know exactly these little inflections I'm looking for to make myself feel satiated. So that I'm doing those, and then they don't know exactly why I'm putting, maybe the auto tune before it hits this other plugin, before it hits another plugin. They don't know why I'm doing it. They just see the plugins being tossed on, So I think it's really cool how you break down the why, so that way people not only walk away from your course from being able to do it in just their laptop, but they can go into any studio around the world and then be able to sit down next to an engineer and say, do me a favor, can you do it like this? Because I'll be honest, one thing I've noticed, you never know the degree of knowledge that the person who's an engineer in another studio is in just because they're sitting behind that chair. You
Yeah,
never
it
know.
doesn't take much to become an engineer. Like
No.
you can, like a lot of the like studios are throwing their interns. Like if you're a new client,
Yep.
they don't know you. It's like they're
Yep.
gonna throw their new people that are inexperienced, and like engineers don't have to be musicians either.
Yep.
Like people that came up as interns at the same spot that I did, had no musical knowledge prior, and like but they could hit 3 on Pro Tools and like get and have vocal chains set up and get the job done, but like they don't necessarily have any sort of compositional or musical knowledge that really
Exactly.
makes it like a great
and creative, that creative side they might not use something in a creative way. And the reason why I say this is because one time I was in a studio and the guy didn't know that I was a vocal producer. So I was recording something with an artist. And then I said, okay, so I asked him to do something, and he was like, he's like, I don't think I can do that. And I was like, you can't fly that around here and just add this and then take the melodyne and then add a fifth harmony on it. What do you mean you can't do it? And he looked at me, and it was one of those moments that only 2 things either happened. Either one, he didn't know how to do it at all. So he just said, oh, you can't do that. Right. Which to me showed, why is this guy the engineer in the first place? Or 2, he wanted us to spend more time because he gets paid by the hour. So if he has the singer constantly keep singing it, I see you smiling. If he had the singer constantly keep singing it, he was pulling this thing. And I was looking at this guy going, how did you get this job? But then I realized sometimes studios are hiring people right out of college. They were the intern for a little bit. The person has never really worked with a bunch of artists, and definitely not with someone who's really professional all the time. The studio owner is just like, here, take the job. The kid's super happy, I got this job, but doesn't mean they have the information and the knowledge yet to actually execute at the highest level. So when you have that power to sit there next to the engineer and go, hey, I need you to do this, it's a different dynamic that happens in the room. And then you actually can start to be really creative, and there's a different respect level that comes out.
Definitely. And like the people you're working with are going to want, like they will respect you more, and they'll like, it makes their job easier when you give them direction and like, because they're there to essentially serve the artist,
Yeah.
they're there to like serve the product and the greater vision of that. And like if you have that already, it makes everyone's job easier, because then you're not asking your engineers and producers to be the artists for you either. Like they're like you hired them for a specific job, and it gets frustrating when you have to be all of these things that an artist isn't, especially early on. sometimes, because you're like, man, you should take some time to learn some of this stuff, because it's going to make your relationships with people a lot more fluid and a lot more meaningful. And they're going to respect you as like a talent even more, that you have the same information that they respect themselves. And
You're speaking the same language. You're speaking the same language. You know, it's funny. This is totally random, but so I've been learning like different languages and trying to like fill my brain with them, because I think polyglots are pretty cool when you're able to go anywhere in the world and speak how you feel. But you can't, if you're talking to someone in Russian and you can't speak how you feel, then they're not going to really be able to communicate. But if you can speak the way you feel in different language, it gets pretty interesting. So I happened to go on YouTube the other day and I was researching like best tricks to become a polyglot and just different books to read. And I watched these videos of people who go on a website called Omegle, and they just basically wait for different things to pop up and they start talking in the language that the person's in. And they'll say, you know, like, where are you from? And the person's like, from Philippines. And then the person starts speaking Filipino. But they're not Filipino at all. And then they'll go to another one and like, where are you from? Russia. The person starts speaking Russian. There's one guy who spoke 26 languages and was just doing it. But here was the interesting thing. Whenever the guy did it, people flipped out. They were like, what? You speak my language? You don't look like you would look like me at all. Like, that's crazy. And when I was looking at this, I'm going, they are respecting the fact that someone who wasn't forced to learn their language took the time to do it. So they were happy. And the amount of people who said, if you ever come over here, let me know, I'll take you out. I'll buy you drinks, I'll buy you food, and this and the other. I went, that's kind of how I feel when I meet a new artist and they say, I'll send you the stems. And I'm like,
yes.
Right?
And it's like no big deal to them. It's like, but then I'm thinking about my nightmare clients before that are like, fucking, it's just all over the place.
All over the place. Nothing's labeled. It's all crazy. But when someone's like, cool, I'll sing the stems, or they go, I'll sing the stems, or what kind of DAW do you have? And I'm like, you know, Pro Tools, Studio One, Logic. Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Do you want the stems dry or wet? Wait, huh? You know, you start to have these, do you want me to tune them first? Do you want playlists or do you want a final comp? When they start talking my language and they're young, I'm like, you're going to become successful. And I'll talk to someone who might be in their 30s and they'll say, oh, well, Adam, it's too hard. And, you know, it's going to take time and blah, blah. I'm like, yo, there's an 18-year-old kid out there right now who's on your heels and you don't know it. And they're looking at it like it's a video game. They're like, I'll drop it however you need it. I know exactly, you know, how to organize it. And to me, I think the future of music is independent. And I think the future of music is being able to do things from home, because I don't think everyone is going to be in the same LA dream. And I know we're getting deeper and it's a little bit off topic, but before it was all about moving to Los Angeles. You live in Los Angeles. I lived in Los Angeles. It was all Los Angeles. But now in the world, people are like, wait a second, due to what's happening with COVID, we realize you can do things from home anywhere in the world, which means you can produce and collaborate with anyone in the world, which opens up 8 billion opportunities. That's a whole different scale. So if you can communicate and say, hey, I just took Shaun's course. I just took Shaun's course. This thing was awesome. I was able to learn these things. And now when I talk with other collaborators anywhere in the world, when they talk to me, they get that same exact feeling. Like the Omegle guy, they're like, huh, you know, that's a good feeling to get.
Yeah, because honestly, like even as a producer and like thinking about clients that I even want to take on, it's just like now I'm like, if you can't do your vocals yourself, it's like I'm gonna have to like raise rates for this, because it becomes extremely inconvenient now. Like especially now with being in LA and there being strict pandemic like restrictions going on and things like that just ongoing, and I don't know how long that's gonna last, but like things are different now, and like the way that the world is going to be operating is not going to go back to what it was. It's like after all of these really great improvements, despite all of the other
hardships, of course.
It's where it was going, and like it's not going to go back. It's just COVID was just a match underneath what was supposed to be happening anyway. So
yeah, I think you're right. This is something that musicians, we should have been doing as a whole even prior. But this was like one of those moments of saying, okay, now you have to look at yourself in the mirror and look at some of the things that are possible to fix. I've spoken to so many producers who have said the same thing to me. And they go, Adam, I know that this whole thing has been crazy. And they always go, but I learned so much in this last year of things that I got better at. that I didn't realize I could have done it prior. Like I had an email from someone who said, Adam, I've learned more in this last year than I have in the last 10 years of my whole entire career. I'm like, yeah, because you actually focused your attention and time.
Yeah.
You know, it's wild. All right, brother. Well, I just want to say thank you for taking the time out here. So everyone who's going to watch this, we're going to be giving a special code so you can get 10% off of Shaun's course. I highly recommend if you're a serious artist, producer, and you want to be doing high quality vocals that sound like they're already on the radio, or so you can get to understand the knowledge, so you can collaborate with people around the world and have this feeling of power and understanding what you're doing, you can take this one course and it'll basically solve all those problems. And you'll never have that thought again, because then you'll be a truly professional at making your voice sound the best it possibly can be. So check out Shaun's course. We're going to post it. And anyone who checked this out, make sure you grab that code and use it, because it's only going to be there for a limited time. Once again, Shaun, I appreciate taking the time, brother. And thank you for making this course for everyone, because I think you are going to help a lot of people go from going, I can't do this, to wait a second, now I'm doing it. And it'll happen in a very short period of time, brother. Thank you.
Hope so. All right, man.
All right, man. Take it easy, bro. Later.